issue of the territories, we can operate on four planes. One is bilateral, Israel and the Palestinians, which means either negotiations or occasionally direct military conflict. One is regional, that is working with the Arab states, which we now have relations with 6 of them. One is global, that is working with the United States or other major international superpowers or with the UN or multinational organizations. And one is, of course, unilateral. I think that the best strategy for Israel is to work on all 4 of those, and particularly to pick for each issue the avenue that is most advantageous to us, and to try on all 4. That means that obviously there is a place for direct negotiations where they can lead to progress. I don't think that there is a place for a bilateral negotiation that will lead to a final status agreement that will end the dispute completely. I think that's a fantasy, and it would be risky to gamble on that once again. But I do think that there are places bilaterally where we can reach a better status quo and a better understanding that can then have knock-on positive effects that make a final status peace agreement more likely in the future. I think there are certain unilateral steps that Israel can take. Hopefully, even unilaterally, those steps are coordinated well, both with our allies in the United States and, where possible, with the Palestinian Authority itself. And rather than speak in hints, I can say explicitly what I think one of the directions might be. As I indicated by my earlier discussion of the Janine model, I think that there are at least, there are roughly 9 or 10 settlements out of 125 settlements. There are about 9 or 10 that evacuating them would dramatically change the geography of the West Bank in a way that makes the conflict much more manageable. I don't think there's any reason for Israel to evacuate more than that number without a peace agreement. But in the absence of a peace agreement, I think there's a way of a very limited change, a very limited redeployment of the civilian presence in a way that is advantageous both to the army and, for that matter, that's a great benefit to the Palestinians as well. And I think regionally there's a lot to go, not just in the normalization agreements. I think that there's a place for bringing in a very limited way, there's a place for bringing in some of the Arab states, particularly the ones we now have relations with, onto some kind of abstract and very, very generally worded understandings on issues like Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. In terms of in terms of turning towards international institutions, there are very few issues where bringing in the UN brings in an influence that's positive for Israel or that's on an issue that's good for us. But there are a few very limited ones where there is room for that, and there's certainly room for involving the United States and other global actors on, again, a very limited number of issues where there's a consensus in Israel's favor.